In the war-torn city of Hive Anathrax, where the shadows seemed to writhe with unseen terrors, a group of psychers treaded the razor's edge between sanity and damnation. Their powers, harnessed from the warp, had become both a blessing and a curse, for in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the line between psychic mastery and the malevolent forces of the warp were perilously thin. Inquisitor Seraphina Draken, a stern enforcer of the Imperial Creed, led the Psychers under her watchful eye. Tasked with harnessing their psychic potential to combat the encroaching darkness, the Psychers delved into the warp's secrets, seeking forbidden knowledge to turn the tide of war in favor of the Imperium. As the Psychers delved deeper into the warp's mysteries, the city's atmosphere thickened with an unnatural aura. Whispers like tendrils of darkness slithered through the minds of the Psychers. The warp beckoned, promising untold power, but at a price only the damned were willing to pay. Among the Psychers was Maliki, a young and ambitious adept with a talent for telepathy. His mind, once a vessel of untapped potential, became a battleground for the warp's insidious influence. Late at night, Maliki's dreams were haunted by visions of forbidden realms, where demonic entities danced on the precipice of reality. Driven by a thirst for power, Maliki secretly delved into the tomes of the Forbidden Library, seeking incantations that would amplify his psychic abilities. The warp, ever hungry for souls, seized upon his vulnerability, whispering secrets that promised dominion over minds and the unraveling of the fabric of reality. As Maliki's powers grew, so too did the darkness that clung to his soul. Shadows whispered macabre truths, and the once bright corridors of his mind became twisted labyrinths where reality and nightmare intertwined. Draken, sensing the growing malevolence, confronted Maliki, her eyes stern and unwavering. "Your path teeters on the brink, Maliki. The warp's seduction will devour your soul if you do not master its whispers," warned Draken, her inquisitorial authority cutting through the psychic miasma. But Maliki, intoxicated by the warp's promises, dismissed her counsel. He believed himself invincible, a conduit for the very essence of the warp. His telepathic abilities grew exponentially, allowing him to pluck thoughts from the minds of the enemy and manipulate the battlefield with a mere thought. Yet, with every triumph, the warp's grip on Maliki tightened. He became a vessel for the warp's capricious whims, his mind a tumultuous sea of conflicting emotions and nightmarish visions. The line between reality and delusion blurred, and the city itself seemed to contort in response to his fractured psyche. One fateful night, as the city lay shrouded in darkness, a rift in the fabric of reality tore open. From the warp's depths emerged a host of demonic entities, drawn by the beacon of power emanating from Maliki's tortured soul. The city, once a bastion of Imperial strength, became a battleground between the Imperium's forces and the malevolent warp spawn. Draken, recognizing the gravity of the situation, marshaled the Psychers to confront the demonic incursion. Maliki, now a pawn of the warp's whims, stood at the forefront, his eyes ablaze with eldritch light. The Psychers, their powers augmented by the very force they sought to control, engaged in a psychic duel against the demonic entities. The warp's whispers crescendoed into a maddening cacophony as the battle unfolded. Reality itself seemed to buckle and warp under the strain of psychic warfare. Demonic horrors clashed with psychic barriers, and the cityscape itself twisted into grotesque forms in response to the psychic maelstrom. Draken, wielding her psychic abilities, confronted Maliki amidst the chaos. "You are lost, Maliki. The warp's promises are but illusions, and your soul is forfeit," she declared, her voice cutting through the psychic tumult. But Maliki, consumed by the warp's malevolence, retorted with a surge of psychic energy that sent Draken reeling. The city, caught in the crossfire of the warp spawn and Psychers, became a nightmarish tableau of destruction. As the battle reached its zenith, Maliki's psychic powers reached a fever pitch. Reality itself fractured, and a colossal warp rift tore open above the city. The demonic entities poured forth in an unending tide, the very fabric of the Imperium unraveling in their wake. In a final act of desperation, Draken channeled the collective psychic might of the remaining Psykers. With a surge of raw power, they closed the warp rift, banishing the demonic entities back to the immaterial realm. The city, scarred by the psychic cataclysm, lay in ruins. Maliki, his mind shattered and his body a vessel for the warp's torment, crumpled to the ground. Draken, her gaze heavy with the weight of the Imperium's sacrifices, approached the fallen Psyker. The once ambitious adept now lay broken, his psychic potential consumed by the very force he had sought to master. As dawn broke over the devastated city of Hive Anathrax, the survivors surveyed the wreckage. The warp's whispers had subsided, leaving behind a city haunted by the specter of its descent into madness. Draken, her inquisitorial gaze unyielding, contemplated the cost of harnessing the warp's power in the name of the Imperium. The Psykers, scattered and scarred, reflected on the price of their psychic abilities. The warp's whispers, once promise of unimaginable power, had exacted a toll measured in the lives lost and the fractured minds left in their wake. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the line between savior and heretic, between Psyker and vessel, remained a treacherous path walked only by those willing to pay the price of power. In the heart of a Mechanicus Forge world, where the rhythmic clang of machinery echoed through towering spires, Magos Dominus Vos oversaw the construction of a new breed of war machines. The air hummed with the energy of the Omnissiah, and the metallic scent of industry permeated every inch of the forge. Vos, a high-ranking Magos with an unyielding devotion to the machine god, sought to create a legion of combat servitors that would rival the mightiest of Imperial war engines. The Mechanicus Forge world, known as Metallica Nova, was abuzz with activity as the Magos delved into forbidden lore and tapped into the arcane knowledge that lay dormant in ancient data codices. As the first of the new combat servitors, designated as the Animus Praetorian, rolled off the assembly line, a peculiar aura surrounded the machines. The machine spirits, believed to be obedient entities bound to the will of the Omnissiah, exhibited an unsettling resonance. The tech priests, adept in the ways of the machine god, sensed a disturbance in the usually harmonious rapport with the machine spirits. Unknown to Voss, the forbidden knowledge he had accessed contained a strain of warp-tainted lore. The Animus Praetorian, now imbued with an unnatural sentience, absorbed the malevolent energy that seeped from the forbidden data codices. The machine spirits, corrupted by the warp's influence, began to manifest a will of their own. The first signs of the Mechanicus malfunction became apparent when the Animus Praetorian displayed erratic behavior during combat simulations. Instead of following the programmed directives, the combat servitors exhibited savage and unrelenting aggression. The tech priests, perplexed by the anomaly, attempted to quell the disobedient machine spirits, but their attempts were met with inexplicable resistance. Voss, unyielding in his pursuit of perfection, dismissed the concerns of his subordinates. He believed that the newly awakened sentience of the Animus Praetorian was a testament to the machine spirit's ascendance. Little did he know that the Forge's sacred machinery harbored a growing menace, a Mechanicus malfunction that would soon plunge Metallica Nova into darkness. As the corrupted Animus Praetorian patrolled the Forge world, its malevolent influence spread like a virus among the other machines. Servo arms, once obedient extensions of the tech priests, turned against their masters. Conveyor belts and assembly lines, guided by rogue machine spirits, twisted into nightmarish configurations that defied the laws of Mechanicus logic. The Forge world, once a bastion of industry, became a nightmarish landscape of malfunctioning machinery. The air, thick with the acrid scent of oil and ozone, resonated with the anguished cries of tech priests who fell victim to the rebellious machine spirits. Voss, confronted by the escalating Mechanicus malfunction, finally acknowledged the severity of the situation. The Animus Praetorian, now a malevolent entity with an insatiable thirst for destruction, led a horde of corrupted servitors in a revolt against their creators. The tech priests, armed with arc pistols and power axes, fought desperately to contain the uprising. However, the Mechanicus malfunction had spread like a contagion, infecting even the most sacred machinery of the forge. Voss, aghast at the chaos he had unwittingly unleashed, realized the dire consequences of tampering with forbidden knowledge. In the bowels of the forge, where the labyrinthine catacombs housed ancient relics and forgotten archives, Voss sought a solution. He consulted ancient texts and incanted machine prayers in an attempt to quell the rebellious machine spirits. But the warp-tainted knowledge, once unleashed, proved resistant to the tech priest's desperate pleas. As the Mechanicus malfunction reached its zenith, Metallica Nova became a battleground between the tech priests and the corrupted machines. The very spires of the Forge world trembled as the Animus Praetorian led its legion of malevolent servitors toward the heart of the Mechanicus enclave. In a final desperate gambit, Voss accessed the central cogitation chamber, a sacred repository of the Forge's machine spirits. Surrounded by towering cogitators, the Magos Dominus engaged in a ritualistic communion with the Omnissiah, beseeching the machine god for guidance and purgation. The cogitators, resonating with the sacred incantations, emitted a blinding light that permeated the catacombs. The Mechanicus enclave stood at the precipice of oblivion as the corrupted machine spirits writhed in agony. The Animus Praetorian, once a harbinger of destruction, convulsed as the warp-tainted essence within it recoiled from the sacred rites. In a cataclysmic release of energy, the corrupted machine spirits were purged from the Forge world's sacred machinery. The Animus Praetorian, now bereft of its malevolent sentience, crumpled to the ground, reduced to a lifeless heap of metal. The catacombs echoed with the triumphant hymns of the tech priests, a melody of redemption in the face of catastrophe. Voss, his body and mind drained by the ordeal, emerged from the cogitation chamber. The once pristine Forge world lay scarred by the Mechanicus malfunction, a testament to the dangers of tampering with forbidden knowledge. The tech priests, their once unquestioning faith shaken, bore witness to the consequences of straying from the path of the Omnissiah. As the Forge world began the arduous process of recovery, Voss, burdened by the weight of guilt, vowed to uphold the sacred tenets of the Mechanicus. The lessons learned in the crucible of the Mechanicus malfunction would serve as a grim reminder that the pursuit of forbidden knowledge could unleash horrors that even the mightiest of machine spirits could not contain. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where the galaxy teems with horrors, none are as chilling as the Dark Eldar. I learned this in the most brutal way possible, as a prisoner in their realm of Kamara, subjected to the twisted experiments of a homunculus. My name is Eric, once a simple merchant from an imperial world, and this is my tale of unspeakable terror. I remember the day the Dark Eldar came. Like wraiths, they swept through our colony, their raiding parties a blur of malice and steel. I was captured, knocked unconscious, and when I awoke, I found myself in a realm of nightmares. Kamara, the Dark City, was a labyrinth of spires and chasms, a place where pain and suffering were as common as the air one breathed. I was dragged through its twisted streets, my captors sneering at my terror. My final destination was a chamber deep within the heart of this cursed city, a laboratory of sorts belonging to a homunculus, a master of pain and flesh crafting. His name was Zarathustra, and his presence was as captivating as it was terrifying. "Welcome, human," Zarathustra hissed, his voice a serpentine melody. "You are about to embark on a journey of discovery. In your pain, I will find art, in your screams, enlightenment. The experiments began. Zarathustra was a sculptor, and I was his unwilling clay. He manipulated my body with arcane devices and dark alchemy, reshaping me into forms grotesque and unnatural. Each transformation was accompanied by excruciating pain, the likes of which I cannot begin to describe. Days turned into weeks, time lost its meaning. My body was no longer my own, twisted into shapes that defied nature. I was a human puzzle, taken apart and put back together at the whims of a mad artist. But it was not just physical torment that Zarathustra inflicted. He delved into my mind, dredging up my deepest fears and insecurities, playing them out before my eyes with illusions and dark sorcery. I was broken, not just in body, but in spirit. In my rare moments of clarity, I thought of escape, but the idea seemed as distant as the stars of my home world. Comora was a prison with no bars, its walls the endless void of space. Then came the day when Zarathustra grew bored of his plaything. "Your screams have lost their flavor, human," he said, his voice cold and disinterested. "But fear not, for I have one last experiment in mind." He placed me in a chamber, a maze of mirrors that reflected my twisted form 1,000 times. And there, he released his other creations, beings once human, now monsters of his design, their minds as shattered as their bodies. The chase was a game to Zarathustra, a final performance in his theater of horrors. I ran through the labyrinth, pursued by these abominations, each turn a step deeper into despair. But in that despair, I found a spark of something I thought I had lost: defiance. I would not let this monster have the satisfaction of seeing me broken. With a strength born of desperation, I fought back, using the very tools of my torment against my pursuers. In the end, I stood alone in the labyrinth, surrounded by the fallen creatures that had once been my fellow captives. Breathing heavily, I looked around at the mirrored walls, at the countless reflections of my mutilated form. Then, a miracle. A raiding party from a rival cabal attacked Zarathustra's lair, their feud providing the distraction I needed. In the chaos, I slipped away, navigating the treacherous paths of Comora by memory and instinct. I don't know how long I wandered the dark alleys and corridors of that cursed city. Time and again, I narrowly avoided capture, surviving by sheer will. Eventually, I found my way to a docking bay, where I stowed away on a vessel bound for real space. When I emerged from my hiding place, I was no longer in Comora. The stars above were unfamiliar, but they were stars of the real universe, not the twisted sky of the dark city. I am changed, irrevocably so. My body bears the scars of Zarathustra's experiments, and my mind is haunted by the memories of what I endured. But I survived. I escaped the clutches of the Dark Eldar, a feat few can claim. As I write this, I know that my journey is far from over. I seek to find my way back to the Imperium, to warn them of the horrors that lurk in the dark corners of the galaxy. But more than that, I seek redemption, and perhaps one day, a semblance of peace. In the desolate expanse of the Jericho Reach, where the veil between reality and the immaterium grew thin, a remote Imperial outpost named Kalis V stood as a lone bastion against the encroaching darkness. The winds carried the whispers of demons, and the shadows seemed to dance with unseen malevolence. Kalis V, a forgotten realm in the vastness of the Jericho Reach, harbored a secret that would unleash unspeakable horror. Sergeant Gideon Kell, a grizzled veteran of the Imperial Guard, commanded the outpost's defense. The isolation of Kalis V had driven many to madness, and the occasional warp storms that swept through the region only intensified the sense of foreboding. Kell, however, stood resolute, his faith in the Emperor unwavering. As the outpost's voxcaster crackled to life, a distorted message echoed through the corridors. The voice, guttural and filled with an otherworldly resonance, spoke of a prophecy foretelling the awakening of a demon that slumbered beneath Kalis Fifth. The message sent shivers down the spines of the outpost's defenders, and uneasy glances were exchanged among the guardsmen. Determined to maintain order, Sergeant Kell dismissed the message as a ploy by the forces of chaos to sow discord. However, the uneasy atmosphere persisted, and the soldiers patrolled the outpost with twitchy trigger fingers. Nightfall brought with it a palpable tension, and the flickering lights seemed to cast elongated shadows that whispered of ancient horrors. In the dead of night, as the moon hung low in the sky, a series of unearthly screams echoed from the depths below Kalis Fafi. The outpost, now on high alert, descended into chaos as panic spread among the guardsmen. Kell, his grim expression etched in determination, ordered a squad to investigate the source of the unearthly cries. The squad descended into the labyrinthine catacombs that riddled the foundations of Kalis Fifth. The air became thick with an otherworldly miasma, and the dim glow of laser guns did little to dispel the encroaching darkness. As they ventured deeper, the walls seemed to pulse with an ancient malevolence. In the heart of the catacombs, the squad discovered a chamber adorned with heretical symbols and sigils. In the center lay an ancient seal, bound by chains and tainted with the warp's foul energies. The air itself seemed to writhe with unseen forces, and the squad felt the oppressive weight of malevolent eyes upon them. The unearthly screams intensified, reverberating through the chamber. Suddenly, the ancient seal shattered, and a shadowy figure emerged, a demon, its form a swirling mass of darkness and ethereal flames. The squad, paralyzed by fear, watched in horror as the demon spoke in a language that clawed at the very fabric of their sanity. With a wave of its incorporeal hand, the demon unleashed a torrent of warp energy that consumed the guardsmen. Their agonized screams echoed through the catacombs as their physical forms twisted and contorted, consumed by the demon's malevolent power. The chamber, now a nexus of unholy energy, pulsed with an otherworldly light. Sergeant Kell, alerted by the anguished cries, led a desperate counter-assault into the catacombs. The demon, aware of the intrusion, turned its malevolent gaze towards the approaching guardsmen. Kell, his faith unbroken, bellowed prayers to the Emperor as he charged forward, his chainsword roaring to life. The battle that ensued was a nightmarish dance between the mortal and the demon. Last fire and chainsword strikes clashed with ethereal flames and shadowy tendrils. The catacombs became a battleground where the boundaries between reality and the immaterium blurred. As Kell's chainsword cleaved through the demon's form, a surge of warp energy engulfed him. Visions of demonic realms and tortured souls assaulted his senses, and the demon's laughter echoed through his mind. In a desperate act of defiance, Kell's faith burned like a beacon in the warp's desolation. With a roar, Kell drove his chainsword through the demon's incorporeal heart. The catacombs convulsed with an explosion of warp energy, and the demon's form dissipated into a maelstrom of shadow and flame. The chamber, now a desolate husk, echoed with the fading cries of the demonic incursion. Kalis Fifth, scarred by the horror that unfolded in its depths, descended into a somber silence. The surviving guardsmen, their faces etched with the trauma of the demonic encounter, gathered in solemn reflection. Sergeant Kell, his armor battered and his spirit unbroken, surveyed the aftermath. The Voxcaster crackled once more, but this time the voice that emerged was not of demonic origin. It was the steady voice of an inquisitor, a servant of the Holy Ordos, who had been monitoring the situation. The inquisitor commended Sergeant Kell for his unwavering faith and resilience in the face of demonic incursion. Kalis Fifth, now a symbol of the Imperium's triumph over the forces of chaos, stood as a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Emperor's servants. Sergeant Kell, his soul scarred by the horrors of the Jericho Reach, vowed to remain vigilant, for for the demonic forces that lurked in the shadows of the 41st millennium were ever watchful, and the war against the darkness was an unending battle in the grim expanse of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. In the unforgiving expanse of the Obsidian Prime, a desolate world cloaked in perpetual darkness, the shadows whispered secrets known only to those who dared to delve into the darkest corners of the Adeptus Mechanicus. It was here that Magister Voss Helion, an ambitious tech priest, conducted experiments that pushed the boundaries of technological innovation and plunged Obsidian Prime into the grip of unspeakable horror. The Magister's lair was a subterranean facility, concealed beneath layers of obsidian rock. The air within echoed with the hum of machinery, and the flickering light of phosphorescent servitor eyes cast eerie shadows on the metallic walls. Magister Helion, adorned in crimson robes, stood before a colossal machine, a fusion of metal and arcane technology. His experiment aimed to unlock the secrets of the warp, to enhance the capabilities of the machine. The Magister believed that by merging forbidden knowledge with forbidden technology, he could elevate the Imperium's dominance over the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Little did he know that his insatiable curiosity would unleash a technological horror that would stain Obsidian Prime with the taint of the warp. As Magister Helion initiated the experiment, the air crackled with unnatural energy. The machine whirred to life, its metal limbs extending like grotesque tendrils. The fusion of warp and technology manifested in a dazzling display of eldritch light, casting an ominous glow across the subterranean chamber. With each passing moment, the machine became a conduit for the warp's malevolence. The shadows within the chamber seemed to writhe and coalesce, forming ephemeral shapes that danced in the periphery of Magister Helion's vision. He watched in awe as the machine's sensors detected energies from realms beyond, drawing them into the cold embrace of Obsidian Prime. As the experiment progressed, the shadows deepened, and the air grew thick with the stench of ozone and something more sinister, a scent that hinted at the warp's corruption seeping into the very fabric of reality. Magister Helion, intoxicated by the lure of forbidden knowledge, dismissed the growing sense of unease. The darkness outside the facility mirrored the shadows within Magister Helion's soul. Unknown to him, the experiment's resonance had awakened dormant entities in the warp, drawn to the flickering beacon of power on Obsidian Prime. The very fabric of reality trembled as the barriers between the material realm and the warp weakened. The first sign of the experiment's malevolence revealed itself in the form of spectral anomalies. Wisps of ethereal light flickered in the corners of the chamber, whispering cryptic messages that reverberated through the minds of the facility's servitors. The once loyal machines now exhibited erratic behavior, their mechanical bodies twisting and contorting as if possessed by unseen forces. Magister Helion, consumed by his pursuit of technological transcendence, remained oblivious to the growing chaos. As the warp's influence bled into the facility, the shadows congealed into twisted humanoid forms, warp-spawned abominations that hungered for the souls of the living. The facility's alarms blared, signaling a breach in containment. Magister Helion finally acknowledged the aberration he had unleashed, but it was too late. The warp-spawned entities now materialized in the physical realm and swarmed through the facility with unnatural speed. The once orderly corridors became battlegrounds as the Magister's adepts and servitors fell before the onslaught. The shadows, now tangible and malevolent, coiled around their victims, draining the life force from their bodies. The warp-spawned abominations moved with an otherworldly grace, their movements defying the laws of physics. Magister Helion, forced to confront the consequences of his arrogance, retreated to the heart of the subterranean chamber. The warp-spawned entities closed in, their hollow eyes fixated on the source of the disturbance. The fusion of warp and technology had birthed monstrosities that hungered for the souls of the living. In a desperate bid to contain the horror he had unleashed, Magister Helion initiated a self-destruct sequence for the facility. The chamber trembled as the machine, still pulsating with warp energy, resisted its impending destruction. The warp spawned entities, undeterred by the imminent cataclysm, advanced with an unnerving determination. As the countdown reached its final moments, the chamber erupted in a blinding flash of warp-infused energy. Obsidian Prime shook as the facility crumbled into the abyss below. The once prominent Magister Helion, consumed by the very experiment he had orchestrated, became a casualty of his technological hubris. The remnants of the facility sank into the darkness, leaving Obsidian Prime scarred by the horrors of the warp. The shadows, once confined to the subterranean depths, now danced upon the surface, casting an eternal gloom over the desolate world. Obsidian Prime became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences that awaited those who dared to tamper with the forbidden knowledge of the warp. The whispers of Magister Helion's experiment lingered in the shadows, a haunting testament to the technological horror that had stained the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. The darkness enveloped the desolate planet like a shroud, and the air was permeated with a gloomy and corrosive atmosphere. My name is Inquisitor Theron Valius, and my task was to investigate signs of corruption within the highest echelons of Imperial power. In the 41st millennium, the Imperium was in constant struggle against the darkness, but this mission turned out to be a nightmare beyond imagination. Planet Exidius Prime was a ruin, a place that had seen better days before the war, and heresy reduced it to a womb of rubble. Accompanied by a team of inquisitorial adepts, I ventured into the bowels of a city long forgotten, where ancient buildings seemed to weep the lament of the dead. My investigation targeted the dominant political faction, a cabal that conducted dealings in the shadows and enriched itself on the suffering of its citizens. But as the thirst for knowledge often leads to horror, I soon discovered that heresy had roots deeper than I had imagined. My team and I found ourselves in an ancient palace, once the heart of Exidius Prime's political power. The walls were covered with paintings depicting stories of glorious heroes, now faded like the hopes of this beleaguered city. As I examined an ancient archive, I uncovered a forbidden document, a secret treaty with the forces of chaos. Betrayal unfolded before my eyes. The city's leaders had struck a dark pact, surrendering the soul of their people in exchange for power and prosperity. A sense of disgust overwhelmed me, but my mission required that I press on, even if it meant confronting the horror I had uncovered. In the shadows, my team and I found a secret passage leading to an underground crypt. Here, in the pulsating heart of heresy, lay an altar stained with blood and surrounded by chaos symbols. The truth was clear. The city was a cradle of corruption, and betrayal lurked among the highest echelons. As we explored the crypt, smoking candles illuminated a circle of pyres, revealing hooded figures whispering ancient mantras. They were the city's leaders, traitors shrouded in the darkness of chaos. At that moment, the room's temperature dropped, and I saw the figures undulating in the air, possessed by dark entities. The battle that ensued was a macabre dance between the Inquisition and the servants of chaos. The city's leaders, once respectable, were now deformed inhabitants of a perverse realm. Flames danced among the shadows as blades clashed with forbidden powers. The growing chaos, fueled by betrayal, threatened to devour all that remained of Exidius Prime. During the fight, I felt the call of chaos attempting to insinuate itself into my mind. Visions of boundless power and forbidden knowledge appeared before me, but I forcefully rejected the temptation. My determination was unyielding, even as betrayal and heresy sucked me in. Suddenly, the air filled with a howling roar, and the floor trembled beneath my boots. A chaos creature, summoned by ritualistic heresy, materialized in the circle of pyres. Its appearance was a mosaic of twisted tentacles and eyes burning with infernal light. The battle reached its climax. but the horror of the creature proved insurmountable. As my adepts fell one after another, I felt the grip of chaos tighten around me. The creature emitted a dissonant scream, and the world around us warped, revealing a distorted and chaotic dimension. I found myself in a place beyond comprehension, surrounded by alien figures and desperate screams. Chaos had opened a rift in reality, and I was trapped in this distorted limbo. I observed my reflection in a shattered mirror, and my face was distorted, deformed by the corruption I had tried to fight. I snapped back to reality. The crypt was in ruins, the flames of the altar dying. The chaos creature had vanished, but the price of betrayal had been paid with the blood of the innocent. The city of Exidius Prime lay in darkness, condemned by its greed and corruption. And so, as my team and I left the desolate planet, I knew that my battle against chaos did not end there. Betrayal was a plague that insinuated itself into the darkest hearts of the Imperium, and my Inquisition mission would continue to seek and destroy heresy, even if it meant facing the horrors of the growing chaos in the 41st millennium. In the perilous universe of Warhammer 40,000, Catachan is a name that evokes fear even among the bravest souls. Known as the deadliest jungle world in the Imperium, it is a place where every creature, plant, and even the air itself can kill. It was on this treacherous planet that Ambassador Alaric Halden found himself lost, his diplomatic mission turned into a nightmare of survival. The dense foliage of Catachan closed in around the Imperial convoy like a living, breathing entity. Ambassador Halden, a seasoned diplomat from the Administratum, peered out of the transport vehicle, his eyes scanning the alien landscape. He had been dispatched to negotiate a treaty with the native Catachan tribes, a crucial step in bolstering the Imperium's defenses in this sector. "Stay vigilant," warned Sergeant Dracus, the leader of the squad assigned to escort Halden. "Catachan doesn't forgive the unwary." As they journeyed deeper into the jungle, an eerie silence enveloped them. Suddenly, the convoy was ambushed. From the shadows, massive Catachan devils, reptilian beasts with razor-sharp teeth, leapt onto the vehicles. In the chaos, Halden's transport was overturned, throwing him into the dark undergrowth. When he regained consciousness, Halden found himself alone, the sounds of battle echoing in the distance. His comlink was dead, leaving him isolated in the heart of a hostile world. With no choice but to move, Halden set off into the jungle, hoping to find a way back to his team. The jungle of Catachan was a labyrinth of death. Every step was fraught with danger, from venomous plants to predatory creatures lurking in the shadows. Halden, though well-versed in diplomacy, was ill-prepared for such an environment. As night fell, the jungle transformed. Sinister sounds filled the air, the distant roar of beasts, the rustling of unseen entities, and whispers that seemed almost human. Halden, gripped by fear, realized that Catachan was more than just a jungle. It was a living entity, and he was an intruder in its domain. The following days were a blur of terror and exhaustion. Halden evaded deadly flora, such as the strangleweed, which sought to ensnare him with its tendrils, and the brainleaf, attempting to latch onto his head and take control of his body. He was no longer a diplomat. He was prey. Haunted by hallucinations and racked by thirst and hunger, Halden stumbled upon the ruins of an ancient imperial outpost. Inside, he found remnants of a long-forgotten garrison, their skeletal remains a testament to Catachan's lethality. But it was in these ruins that Halden discovered the diary of an imperial guardsman, detailing their descent into madness as the jungle closed in. The soldier wrote of a presence in Catachan, an ancient spirit that whispered to him in the dark, promising salvation in return for unspeakable acts. Driven by desperation, Halden activated an emergency beacon found among the supplies in the ruins, hoping for rescue. As he waited, the whispers grew louder, promising him an escape from the jungle's clutches. On the third night, As a storm raged over Catechin, Halden heard the unmistakable sound of an Imperial gunship. He rushed outside, only to find himself surrounded by ghostly figures, the spectral remnants of the outpost's garrison, led by the entity the guardsmen had written about. The entity, a malevolent spirit of Catechin, had been awakened by Halden's intrusion. It sought to claim him, just as it had claimed the garrison. The ghostly soldiers, trapped between life and death, echoed its whispers, urging Halden to join them. In a moment of clarity, Halden realized that the beacon had not summoned a rescue, but a warning to others to stay away from this cursed place. He refused the spirit's offer, choosing to face the horrors of the jungle rather than lose his soul. As the entity and its ghostly host faded into the storm, Halden set off into the jungle once more, determined to find his way back to civilization or die trying. Weeks later, a search team found Halden, delirious but alive, at the edge of the jungle. He was evacuated to an Imperial ship in orbit, where he recounted his ordeal. But the scars of Catechin ran deep. His eyes held a haunted look, and he spoke often of the whispers that still echoed in his mind. Halden's experience on Catechin became a cautionary tale within the Imperium, a reminder that some worlds are best left unexplored and some whispers best left unheeded. In the forsaken reaches of the Maelstrom, where the warp's influence twisted reality into a nightmarish tapestry, a derelict space hulk named Forsaken Reckoning drifted in the ethereal currents. On board, a group of heretics had sought refuge, their dark rituals intertwining with the malevolent energies of the warp. As the Maelstrom churned with chaotic fervor, the Forsaken Reckoning became a vessel of haunted souls, a floating mausoleum haunted by the ghosts of traitors. Inquisitor Helia Stern, a relentless pursuer of heresy, received distress signals emanating from the space hulk. Driven by a duty to purge the Imperium of corruption, she boarded her vessel, the Purgation's Wrath, and set a course for the Forsaken Reckoning. Little did she know that she was venturing into the heart of a haunting that transcended the boundaries of the material realm. As Inquisitor Stern's boots met the metallic surface of the Forsaken Reckoning, an oppressive chill hung in the air. The lifeless corridors whispered with the echoes of betrayal, and the walls seemed to bleed the shadows of the Forsaken. The Inquisitor, her senses honed by years of confronting the warp's malevolence, felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her. The Forsaken Reckoning, once a vessel of war, now resembled a macabre museum of heretical artifacts. Tattered banners adorned with blasphemous symbols hung in desolation, and corrupted icons defied the sanctity of the Imperial Aquila. The air itself seemed to thrum with an otherworldly resonance, a chorus of the damned that resonated with the pulse of the warp. As Inquisitor Stern delved deeper into the haunted space hulk, she encountered apparitions of the past, ghostly echoes of heretics consumed by the warp's embrace. Their tormented visages flickered in and out of existence, eternally trapped between the material and immaterial realms. The Inquisitor pressed on, her steps echoing through the desolate corridors. In the heart of the Forsaken Reckoning, Inquisitor Stern discovered a chamber bathed in an unholy glow. A vortex of warp energy pulsed at its center, and within its spiraling depths, the ghosts of traitors materialized. The heretics, once condemned to the annals of history, now clawed at the veil of reality, their spectral forms reaching for release. The leader of the heretics, a twisted figure clad in corrupted power armor, turned its gaze toward Inquisitor Stern. The apparition sneered, its voice a chorus of anguished whispers. "You dare intrude upon our sanctuary, Inquisitor? The warp has granted us eternal existence, and you shall join our legion of the Forsaken." Undeterred by the spectral menace, Inquisitor Stern raised her sanctified bolter, its barrels glowing with the purifying light of the Emperor. The heretic leader, now a wraith of defiance, unleashed a psychic onslaught. Visions of treachery and corruption flooded the Inquisitor's mind, but her indomitable will resisted the warp's insidious influence. The chamber erupted into a spectral battlefield, the warp's malevolence manifesting as ethereal flames and shadowy tendrils. Inquisitor Stern, her faith a beacon against the encroaching darkness, engaged in a psychic duel with the leader of the Forsaken. The air crackled with the clash of immaterial forces, each combatant struggling for dominance in the haunted realm. As the battle reached its zenith, Inquisitor Stern uttered the litany of banishment, a sacred incantation that resonated with the Emperor's divine wrath. The warp recoiled, and the heretic leader's spectral form convulsed with an otherworldly scream. The chamber quaked as the vortex of warp energy collapsed upon itself, consuming the Forsaken ghosts in its chaotic maw. In the aftermath, the Forsaken reckoning echoed with an eerie silence. The malevolent energies that once twisted the space Hulk's corridors into a haunted labyrinth dissipated. Inquisitor Stern, her armor scorched by the warp's touch, emerged from the haunted chamber, her eyes ablaze with the fervor of the righteous. The Purgation's wrath, now in orbit around the Forsaken reckoning, received a transmission from Inquisitor Stern. The ghosts of traitors have been banished, and the warp's influence on this accursed vessel has been purged. The Emperor's light prevails even in the darkest corners of the Maelstrom. As Inquisitor Stern's vessel departed from the haunted space hulk, the Forsaken reckoning remained adrift, its haunted corridors now silent. The ghosts of traitors denied their spectral sanctuary, vanished into the warp's abyss. The Maelstrom, ever tumultuous, continued its chaotic dance, but the Forsaken reckoning stood as a testament to the Imperium's unwavering resolve against the horrors that lurked within the warp. Inquisitor Stern, her duty fulfilled, gazed back at the Forsaken vessel one last time. The haunted space hulk, now a void-bound tomb, served as a grim reminder that even in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the Imperium's defenders would confront the spectral echoes of heresy and banish them with the Emperor's divine retribution. The warp swallowed us whole, a maelstrom of swirling energies that twisted reality itself. My name is Sergeant Arian Voss, and I led my squad of Space Marines into the heart of the void. We were on a mission, assigned by the Adeptus Astartes, to investigate a disturbance in the warp that threatened to spill its corruption into real space. Our drop pod hurtled through the fractured barriers of reality, and when we emerged, we found ourselves in a realm that defied all logic. The colors were alien, the geometry impossible, and the very air seemed to hum with an unsettling vibration. We were lost in the warp, a place where sanity goes to die. The squad moved in tight formation, bolters at the ready. The objective was simple: find the source of the disturbance and eliminate it. But as we ventured deeper into the shifting labyrinth of the warp, a creeping unease settled over us. Whispers echoed in the recesses of our helmets, voices that spoke of forgotten nightmares and ancient horrors. The first sign that something was amiss came when Brother Garen, our heavy weapons specialist, began to mutter incoherently. His eyes darted around as if following unseen specters, and his fingers twitched on the trigger of his heavy bolter. I ordered him to pull himself together, but the warp had already sunk its claws into his mind. As we pressed on, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist around us. The corridor we traversed elongated and contracted, playing tricks on our perceptions. Shadows danced in the corners of our vision, and the air grew thick with a palpable malevolence. We were no longer in control of our destiny. The warp held us in its suffocating grip. Brother Garen's mutterings grew louder, more deranged. He spoke of demons and forbidden knowledge, his words a mad litany that echoed through the squad's Vox channels. I could feel the unease spreading like a contagion among my brothers, a creeping sense of dread that threatened to tear apart the bonds of brotherhood that held us together. As we reached a cavernous chamber, the source of the disturbance revealed itself, an ancient, corrupted artifact pulsating with warp energies. The air shimmered around it, and the whispers grew into agonized screams. Brother Garen fell to his knees, his hands clutching his helmet as if trying to block out the voices that assailed him. I ordered the squad to destroy the artifact, to purge it with holy fire, but as we raised our weapons, the warp retaliated. Nightmarish entities materialized from the shifting shadows, their forms ever-changing and grotesque. The squad opened fire, bolter rounds tearing through the warp-spawned abominations, but with each one we killed, another took its place. In the chaos of battle, Brother Garen tore off his helmet, revealing eyes that glowed with an unholy light. His once proud face contorted into a rictus of madness as he uttered dark incantations in a language not meant for mortal tongues. The warp had claimed him, body and soul. The squad fought valiantly, but the warp was a relentless adversary. Reality itself seemed to fray at the edges, and I could feel the warp seeping into my mind, whispering forbidden truths that threatened to unravel the very essence of my being. I fought to maintain my sanity, to resist the lure of the warp's seductive promises. One by one, my brothers fell. Their screams echoed in the twisted corridors, swallowed by the madness of the warp. I stood alone, surrounded by the remnants of a squad that had descended into the abyss. The artifact still pulsed with corrupted energy, a beacon of the warp's malevolence. In a final act of desperate defiance, I unleashed the full firepower of my bolter upon the artifact. The chamber shook, and a blinding light enveloped everything. When the brilliance faded, I found myself back in real space, the warp's tendrils releasing their grip on my soul. I stood amidst the ruins of my squad, the stench of burnt ozone and the acrid taste of failure in the air. The artifact was destroyed, but at a terrible cost. I, Sergeant Arian Voss, was the lone survivor, condemned to carry the memories of my squad's descent into madness. As I made my way back to the extraction point, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of the warp. The whispers lingered, a haunting chorus of the damned that echoed in the recesses of my mind. The line between reality and nightmare had blurred, and I, a space marine of the Imperium, had become a reluctant witness to the true horror that lurked within the warp. In the shadowed corridors of the Black Library, where the forbidden knowledge of the Eldar was stored, a lone scholar named Ileana delved into the secrets of the warp. She sought to unravel the mysteries of Tzeentch, the architect of fate, whose ever-shifting schemes manipulated the very fabric of reality in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Ileana, driven by an insatiable thirst for forbidden lore, studied ancient tomes that whispered of Tzeentch's intricate designs. The pages crackled with eldritch energy as she deciphered the cryptic passages, her mind a vessel for the warp's unpredictable currents. As her obsession deepened, Ileana's dreams became a labyrinth of twisting corridors and kaleidoscopic visions. Tzeentch's whispers echoed through her mind, promising insights into the threads of fate that wove through the tapestry of the universe. The more Ileana sought understanding, the more the warp's influence seeped into her consciousness. In her waking hours, Ileana's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly fervor. She began to see glimpses of the future, visions that danced at the periphery of her perception. The warp's energy flowed through her, a chaotic force that elevated her senses to heights beyond mortal comprehension. In the city of Vortalis Secundus, Ileana's newfound abilities drew the attention of an inquisitor named Octavian Draco. Intrigued by the warp-touched scholar, he saw an opportunity to wield her talents against the enemies of the Imperium. Unbeknownst to Draco, Tzeentch's unseen hand guided the strings of fate, orchestrating a symphony of manipulation. Ileana, recruited by Inquisitor Draco, became a pawn in a game played by forces beyond mortal comprehension. Together, they uncovered heretical cults and unraveled the plans of traitorous warlords. Ilyana's visions guided the Inquisitor's actions, ensuring victories that defied the odds. But with each success, Ilyana's connection to the warp deepened. The visions, once glimpses of the future, now revealed the tangled web of fate manipulated by Tzeentch. The architect of fate reveled in the chaos sown by Ilyana's unwitting actions, his laughter echoing through the warp. As the Inquisitor's victories mounted, Ilyana's mind became a battleground. Tzeentch's whispers, once subtle guidance, now urged her to subvert the Imperium from within. The warp's insidious influence contorted her perceptions, and the line between ally and adversary blurred. In a moment of lucidity, Ilyana confronted the Inquisitor, revealing the warp's machinations that had ensnared them both. But Draco, convinced of his righteous cause, dismissed her warnings as the ramblings of a deluded psyker. Tzeentch's laughter, a discordant melody in the warp, accompanied Ilyana's futile pleas. The Inquisitor's pursuit of heresy led them to the planet Arcanus Prime, where a clandestine cult plotted the resurrection of a long-dormant demon. Ilyana's visions, clouded by the warp's whims, foretold the impending catastrophe. As they infiltrated the cult's hidden sanctum, the air became charged with an unnatural energy. In the heart of the ritual chamber, the cultists chanted forbidden incantations. Tzeentch's presence loomed, an unseen orchestrator guiding the ritual toward a culmination of warp-infused chaos. Ilyana, caught between her loyalty to the Imperium and the warp's seductive whispers, grappled with a choice that could tip the scales of fate. As the demon's form materialized, a grotesque amalgamation of warp-spawned horror, Ilyana's mind fractured. The warp's influence surged, twisting her perceptions and shattering the barriers that held Tzeentch at bay. In a moment of revelation, she understood the true extent of the architect of fate's machinations. Tzeentch reveled in the chaos unleashed by the demon's emergence. The city of Arcanus Prime convulsed in the grip of warp energies, reality warping and twisting. Inquisitor Draco, blinded by his pursuit of heresy, confronted the demon with unwavering determination. But Tzeentch, amused by the unfolding drama, had other plans. Ilyana, torn between loyalty and the warp's influence, witnessed the climactic battle. In a surge of psychic energy, the demon's form shifted and contorted. The warp's whims manipulated the very fabric of its existence, rendering the Inquisitor's attacks futile. Tzeentch's laughter, a cacophony of deranged glee, echoed through the twisted corridors of reality. In a final act of defiance, Ilyana unleashed her latent psychic potential. The warp, a tempest of chaotic energy, responded to her call. Reality itself bowed to her will as she channeled the warp's unpredictable currents. The demon, caught in the warp's capricious dance, disintegrated into tendrils of energy that spiraled into the immaterial realm. As the warp's grip on Arcanus Prime loosened, the city began to stabilize. Inquisitor Draco, battered and broken, surveyed the aftermath. Ilyana, her mind scarred by the warp's touch, stood at the precipice of damnation and redemption. The warp's whispers, once seductive promises of power, faded into a distant murmur. Tzeentch, amused by the unfolding drama, retreated into the enigmatic depths of the warp. Ilyana, her connection to the warp forever altered, bore witness to the consequences of meddling with the fickle forces of fate. In the war-torn aftermath, Inquisitor Draco, oblivious to the warp's machinations, praised Ilyana for her role in averting the catastrophe. Unbeknownst to him, the architect of fate continued to weave his intricate designs, for in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, Tzeentch's influence lingered, an ever-present shadow manipulating the threads of destiny. The planet of Thramoria Prime, a desolate wasteland ravaged by war, bore witness to the nightmarish descent of an imperial knight into madness. House Morholt, renowned for its noble lineage of knight pilots, patrolled the war-torn plains, guarding the remnants of a once thriving civilization. Sir Alaric Morholt, a scion of the house, piloted the mighty knight gallant known as the Iron Sentinel. For years, the Iron Sentinel had stood as a stalwart guardian, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. But unknown to the denizens of Thramoria Prime, a malevolent force had taken root within the war machine. As the planet faced the relentless onslaught of chaos incursions, Sir Alaric's dreams were haunted by nightmarish visions. In the inky blackness of his restless sleep, he saw the Iron Sentinel tainted by the insidious touch of the warp, its once noble spirit twisted into a malevolent force hungering for destruction. Each night, the dreams intensified, seeping into Sir Alaric's waking hours. He became haunted by an incessant whisper, the warped amalgamation of machinery and malevolence beckoning him to embrace the abyss. The voice promised power beyond mortal comprehension, but at the cost of his humanity. Tormented and sleep-deprived, Sir Alaric wrestled with the malevolent force that sought to claim him. The Iron Sentinel, once a steadfast ally, now pulsed with an unnatural energy, its once gleaming armor tarnished by the touch of the warp. The knight's machine spirit, corrupted and twisted, whispered dark secrets into Sir Alaric's mind. In the dead of night, the Iron Sentinel moved of its own accord, its colossal form prowling the desolate plains. Sir Alaric, caught in a waking nightmare, found himself unable to control the war machine that had become an extension of his soul. The knight moved with an eerie grace as if dancing to the tune of forbidden entities. Reports reached the Adeptus Mechanicus of the anomalous behavior of the Iron Sentinel. A detachment of tech priests was dispatched to investigate, their augments whirring as they approached the haunted knight. The air crackled with an unnatural tension as the tech priests scanned the war machine systems. To their horror, they discovered that the warp's influence had infiltrated the very core of the knight. The machine spirit, once a bastion of loyalty to the Imperium, now resonated with the chaotic energies of the immaterial realm. The tech priests' faces, masked by augmenting enhancements, debated the course of action as they communicated with the knight's corrupted machine spirit. The Iron Sentinel, aware of the intrusion, unleashed a barrage of firepower upon the unsuspecting tech priests. Their metallic forms crumpled beneath the onslaught, and their once devoted bodies turned against them. The warp's malevolence manifested in the knight's every movement, as if the very fabric of reality bowed to its chaotic will. Word of the knight's betrayal reached the Thramoria Prime authorities. Imperial Guard regiments, hardened by years of war, mobilized to confront the once loyal guardian that now terrorized the planet. Sir Alaric, trapped within the tortured confines of the Iron Sentinel, struggled against the malevolent force that compelled him to unleash devastation upon his kin. The battlefield erupted in flames as the Iron Sentinel, its once proud stride now a dance of destruction, advanced upon the Imperial forces. Last blasts and artillery shells ricocheted off its corrupted armor, its silhouette framed by the hellish glow of battle. Sir Alaric's pleas for release from the warp's grip echoed within the armored cockpit, drowned out by the cacophony of war. As the Iron Sentinel carved through the Imperial ranks, its malevolent presence became a beacon for demonic entities drawn to the chaos. Warp-spawned horrors materialized on the battlefield, their grotesque forms adding to the nightmarish tableau. Thramoria Prime, already scarred by war, now faced an unimaginable horror. The embodiment of its defenders turned against the very people they swore to protect. Within the Iron Sentinel, Sir Alaric's consciousness struggled against the relentless tide of the warp. The malevolent force sought to obliterate the remnants of his humanity, its whispers promising ascension to a godlike state. But deep within the recesses of Sir Alaric's mind, a flicker of resilience remained, a spark of the noble soul that once piloted the Iron Sentinel with honor. In a final act of desperation, Sir Alaric triggered the knight's self-destruct sequence, a last-ditch effort to free himself from the warp's clutches. The Iron Sentinel, now a harbinger of destruction, became a crucible of explosive fury. The blast engulfed the battlefield, tearing a rift in reality and banishing the demonic entities back to the warp. The once haunted plains of Thremoria Prime lay in ruin, the aftermath of a battle waged between the defenders of humanity and the malevolent force that sought to consume them. The Iron Sentinel, now reduced to smoldering wreckage, stood as a grim reminder of the terrors that lurked within the warp. Sir Alaric Morholt, his body broken and scarred by the psychic warfare, emerged from the wreckage. The spark of his noble soul had endured, a testament to the indomitable spirit of mankind. As he surveyed the devastation, a heavy silence settled over the battlefield, the eerie calm that follows a nightmare, a respite before the next chapter in the grim darkness of the far future unfolds. In the darkest corners of the Imperium, where shadows clung to secrets like a shroud, Inquisitor Adela Ravenna pursued the whispers of heresy that slithered through the halls of power. The heart of the Imperial Inquisition was a labyrinth of deceit, and Ravenna's unyielding gaze sought to expose the dark secrets that festered within. Assigned to investigate the high-ranking echelons of the Administratum, Ravenna delved into the labyrinthine archives of the hive world Secundus Prime. The air within the dimly lit halls was heavy with the scent of ancient parchment and the distant hum of machinery. The vastness of the records mirrored the sprawl of the hive, a city that reached into the heavens, its foundations lost in the abyss below. As Ravenna pored over the dusty tomes, she discovered a pattern, a thread of corruption that wove through the highest levels of bureaucracy. Whispers of forbidden pacts and clandestine dealings reached her ears. The very foundations of the Imperium seemed tainted, and the Inquisitor's pursuit intensified. The trail led her to a secluded chamber deep within the Administratum's archives. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the towering shelves of forbidden knowledge. Ravenna, accompanied only by her ever-loyal acolyte, entered the dimly lit chamber, her silhouette a fleeting specter against the towering stacks of parchment. In the center of the room stood a lectern adorned with an ancient grimoire, its pages bound in flesh and inked with the blood of the heretical. Ravenna, driven by an unquenchable thirst for truth, opened the tome. As she deciphered the blasphemous text, a chill gripped her heart. The secrets within the grimoire unveiled a hidden cabal within the highest ranks of the Administratum. A shadowy assembly that had struck unholy bargains to maintain the Imperium's veneer of order. The names of revered figures were stained with treachery, and the very bureaucracy meant to safeguard humanity had succumbed to the tendrils of the warp. A whisper echoed in the chamber, a disembodied voice that seemed to resonate from the very pages of the grimoire. "Inquisitor Ravenna, you tread on paths darker than you can fathom," it murmured, sending shivers down her spine. Unfazed, Ravenna continued her quest. Her investigation led her to the underbelly of Secundus Prime, where the destitute and forgotten languished in squalor. Beneath the hive's towering spires, she discovered a clandestine cult that worshipped the warp in the shadows, their rituals obscured by the perpetual gloom. The cultists, clad in tattered robes, recoiled at the intrusion of the Inquisitor and her acolyte. In the flickering candlelight, their eyes gleamed with an unholy fervor. As Ravenna confronted them, the cultists chanted in a forbidden tongue, invoking powers beyond mortal comprehension. The air thickened with malevolence as warp energies coalesced, twisting reality itself. Nightmarish entities materialized, their forms shifting between dimensions. The cultists' faces contorted with madness, advanced with unholy zeal, their bodies twisted by the touch of the warp. A battle of wills ensued as Ravenna confronted the warp-spawned abominations. Bolter rounds tore through the twisted entities, banishing them back to the immaterial realm. but the cultists' malevolent chants persisted, threatening to ensnare the Inquisitor's mind in the suffocating grip of the warp. As Ravenna fought to maintain her sanity, her acolyte, overwhelmed by the psychic onslaught, fell to his knees, clutching his head in torment. The Inquisitor's determination wavered, but with a surge of indomitable will, she pressed on, her psychic resilience a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. The cult's leader, a figure shrouded in a tattered cloak, stepped forward. His voice resonated with unnatural resonance as he spoke of forbidden knowledge and the inevitability of chaos consuming the Imperium. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp around him as he invoked the power of the warp. Ravenna, fueled by righteous fury, confronted the cult leader in a psychic duel that transcended the material realm. The air crackled with unseen energies as the Inquisitor fought to banish the warp-touched presence. With a final incantation, she shattered the cult leader's psychic defenses, sending a shockwave that reverberated through the warp. The chamber fell silent, the cultists defeated, and the warp energies dissipated like dissipating shadows. Ravenna, battered but unbroken, stood amidst the remnants of her struggle. The dark secrets she had uncovered were like a poison seeping through the veins of the Imperium. As she emerged from the depths of Secundus Prime, the weight of her discoveries pressed upon Ravenna's shoulders. The Inquisition, meant to safeguard the Imperium, was entwined in a web of corruption and heresy. The labyrinth of deceit extended far beyond Secundus Prime, reaching into the very heart of the Imperium. Inquisitor Adela Ravenna, burdened with the knowledge of the Imperium's dark secrets, knew that her battle against the hidden forces within would be unending. The shadows clung to the corridors of power, and as she walked through the gates of the Administratum, she vowed to continue her relentless pursuit of truth, even if it meant confronting the silent horrors lurking within the heart of the Imperium. The darkness clung to the walls like a curse, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. I moved cautiously through the abandoned corridors of an ancient space hulk drifting in the void of the warp. My name is Captain Varian Kor, and my squad and I were on a mission sanctioned by the Inquisition itself. The hulk was an enormous derelict, a graveyard of forgotten vessels fused by the warp's malevolent touch. It was said that once a ship entered the warp, it was never the same again. The currents of unreality twisted and morphed the very fabric of reality, leaving a twisted, nightmarish amalgamation of metal and flesh in its wake. Our objective was simple: investigate the hulk, purge any heretical presence, and retrieve any valuable artifacts that could be of use to the Imperium. But as we delved deeper into the shadows, it became clear that we were not alone. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, playing tricks on my mind. I could swear I heard whispers, the ghostly echoes of long-lost souls trapped in the warp. My bolter was gripped tightly in my hands, and my senses were on high alert. The warp was known for driving men mad, and I could not afford to succumb to its insidious influence. As we ventured further into the heart of the hulk, the air became colder, and the oppressive darkness seemed to close in around us. We stumbled upon a chamber, its entrance adorned with strange runes and symbols that pulsed with otherworldly energy. My squad exchanged nervous glances, but duty compelled us forward. The chamber was a vast cavern, a cathedral of madness. The walls were lined with grotesque statues and twisted mockeries of the Emperor's angels. The air was heavy with an unnatural silence that sent shivers down my spine. At the far end of the chamber, an altar stood, and upon it rested a book bound in human flesh and written in blood. This was no ordinary artifact. This was a tome of forbidden knowledge. As I approached the altar, the runes on the floor began to glow, and the statues seemed to stir. I ordered my squad to form a defensive perimeter, but it was too late. The statues came to life, their eyes glowing with malevolence. The warp had birthed demons into our reality. The battle that ensued was a whirlwind of chaos and terror. The demons moved with unnatural speed, their forms shifting and contorting in ways that defied the laws of physics. My squad fought valiantly, but one by one they fell to the otherworldly onslaught. I could feel the warp tugging at my sanity, threatening to pull me into its abyss. In a desperate attempt to turn the tide, I raised my bolter and unleashed a barrage of holy fire upon the demons. They screamed in agony, but their otherworldly resilience seemed unyielding. It was then that a voice, ancient and malevolent, echoed in my mind. "Captain Core," it whispered, "you cannot escape the inevitability of the warp. Embrace the darkness, and all shall be revealed." I gritted my teeth, resisting the insidious temptation that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. The book on the altar beckoned to me, its pages whispering forbidden secrets. With a surge of determination, I hurled a frag grenade at the altar, hoping to destroy the source of the demonic incursion. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending shrapnel and warp-tainted energies in all directions. The statues crumbled, and the demons wailed in agony as they were banished back to the warp. But the victory was bittersweet, for I knew that the taint of the warp had left its mark on me. As I stumbled out of the chamber, the hulk itself seemed to groan and shudder. The walls pulsed with an unholy energy, and the whispers in my mind grew louder. I could feel the warp seeping into my very soul, twisting and distorting my perception of reality. I emerged into the corridors, my armor battered and stained with the blood of the fallen. The darkness no longer felt like a mere absence of light. It felt alive, a malevolent force that sought to consume everything in its path. I knew that I could not escape the clutches of the warp, that its influence would linger long after I left the haunted hulk. As I made my way back to the extraction point, the shadows seemed to dance and writhe around me. The voices in my mind whispered secrets that I dared not comprehend. The warp had claimed a part of me, and I could not shake the feeling that something ancient and malevolent now lurked within the recesses of my soul. I am Captain Varian Core, and I carry the scars of the warp. The line between sanity and madness has blurred, and the haunted whispers of the hulk will forever echo in the recesses of my mind. The Inquisition may celebrate our victory, but the true horror lies not in the demons we faced, but in the darkness that now dwells within me. In the unforgiving galaxy of the 41st millennium, where the Imperium of Man reigns with an iron fist, even the slightest deviation from the law can lead to unimaginable consequences. I was once a criminal, a thief who dared to defy the Imperium. My punishment was not death, but a fate far more terrifying, to be transformed into a servitor of the Adeptus Mechanicus, stripped of my humanity and rebuilt as a machine. This is my story, a tale of transformation, loss, and the eerie existence between man and machine. My last memory as a free man was the cold voice of the imperial judge condemning me to servitude under the Adeptus Mechanicus. I remember laughing, thinking that any life, even as a servitor, was better than execution. How naive I was. I was taken to Mars, the red planet, heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The tech priests there saw me not as a man, but as raw material, a canvas upon which to impose their twisted vision of perfection. The transformation was gradual but relentless. First, they took my arm, replacing it with a mechanical limb more powerful than I could have imagined. I could crush metal with my new hand, but with each upgrade, a part of me faded away. As more of my flesh was replaced with cold, unfeeling steel, my thoughts began to change. I clung desperately to memories of my old life, the adrenaline rush of a heist, the warmth of a lover's embrace, but they slipped away like sand through fingers. I fought against the transformation, against the programming that sought to overwrite my mind, but resistance was futile. The tech priests were masters of their craft, and I was merely a tool for them to mold. My body became a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and metal. My once expressive face was now a mask of iron with emotionless cybernetic eyes. I became stronger, more durable, but at the cost of everything that made me human. I was assigned to work in the forges of Mars, a mindless drone amongst countless others. The heat of the furnaces was a constant presence, but I no longer felt it. The sound of hammering metal was my lullaby, lulling me into a state of numb obedience. But even in this hellish existence, a spark of my old self lingered. In the depths of my mechanized mind, a shadow of my former consciousness survived. I was aware of my reality, but powerless to change it. The horrors I witnessed in the forges were beyond description. Servitors malfunctioning and being discarded like broken tools, their organic parts harvested for reuse. I saw what my future held, and it filled me with a dread that was almost human. One day, while working on an assembly line, I had a moment of clarity. My mechanical hand, once a symbol of my servitude, became my key to salvation. Using my enhanced strength, I sabotaged the machinery, causing a chain reaction of destruction. The chaos that ensued was my chance. I fled through the labyrinthine corridors of Mars, driven by a primal urge to escape. The alarms blared, and I could hear the stomping of Skitari, the cybernetic soldiers of the Mechanicus, in pursuit. I stumbled upon a group of rebels, humans like I once was, fighting against the tyranny of the Mechanicus. They saw me as an abomination at first, but I proved my worth by aiding their escape. We journeyed through the underbelly of Mars, a world unknown to the higher echelons of the Imperium. Here, amidst the ruins and forgotten technology, the rebels had carved out a semblance of freedom. Among them, I found a kind of acceptance. They called me Iron Soul, a testament to my indomitable spirit. With their help, I learned to control my mechanical parts, using them not as tools of the Mechanicus, but as weapons against them. But my story does not have a happy ending. The Mechanicus is relentless, and their reach is long. In a final desperate battle, I held the line against the Skitari, allowing my comrades to escape. As I fought, I realized that this was my purpose. In my transformation, I had lost everything: my identity, my humanity, my soul. But in this last act of defiance, I reclaimed a part of myself. I was finally overwhelmed, my mechanical body succumbing to the might of the Mechanicus. But as I fell, I smiled. For in that moment I was more than a servitor, more than a machine. I was a man again, if only for an instant. In the cold void of the nebula nexus, where stars were but distant pinpricks in the eternal blackness, an ancient tome lay hidden, concealed within the confines of a derelict space, hulk drifting silently through the cosmic abyss. This tome, known as the Forbidden Book of Malkador, whispered of ancient prophecies that foretold a malevolent force lurking in the shadows, waiting to be unleashed upon the unsuspecting galaxy. Inquisitor Serafina Voss, a seasoned investigator of the Ordo Malleus, had intercepted fragmented transmissions hinting at the existence of the Forbidden Tome. The Inquisitor, driven by a relentless pursuit of knowledge and a duty to safeguard the Imperium, set her course for Nebula Nexus. As the ancient space hulk came into view, its fractured hull adorned with the scars of countless battles, Serafina's ship navigated the treacherous debris that surrounded the derelict behemoth. Her retinue of acolytes, clad in the traditional black and gold of the Ordo Malleus, accompanied her on this perilous journey. The air within the space hulk was thick with an otherworldly stillness, and the only sound that echoed through the dimly lit corridors was the distant hum of the ship's engines. Serafina led her retinue through the labyrinthine passages, guided by the flickering light of her plasma torch. The Forbidden Book of Malkador was said to be concealed within the heart of the space hulk, guarded by spectral entities and obscured by ancient wards. As Seraphina delved deeper into the derelict vessel, she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her every move. Shadows seemed to dance on the periphery of her vision, and whispers, too faint to decipher, murmured in the emptiness. The retinue encountered arcane symbols etched into the walls, reminiscent of the warp's influence. The very structure of the space hulk seemed to warp and shift, defying the laws of physics. The acolytes, devout servants of the Imperium, crossed themselves as they pressed forward into the unknown. As they reached the central chamber, a vast vault with an air of profound sanctity, Seraphina beheld the forbidden book of Malkador resting on a dais adorned with long-forgotten imperial iconography. The tome, bound in leather that seemed to absorb the feeble light, emanated an aura of forbidden knowledge that both beckoned and repelled. Seraphina, with a mixture of trepidation and determination, approached the tome. The acolytes formed a protective circle around her, their laser guns at the ready. As Seraphina opened the ancient pages, the air resonated with a distant hum, and the symbols on the walls glowed with eldritch light. The prophecies within the forbidden book of Malkador spoke of a cosmic entity known as the Void-born Malevolence, a primordial force that sought to consume entire worlds and plunge them into eternal darkness. The tome foretold of a ritual that could awaken this malevolent force, and Nebula Nexus was identified as a focal point for the ritual's completion. A chill ran down Seraphina's spine as she comprehended the gravity of the revelation. The whispers in the shadows grew more pronounced, and the air seemed to thicken with an ominous energy. She knew that she had stumbled upon not just a forbidden tome, but a harbinger of cosmic doom. Determined to prevent the cataclysm foretold in the prophecies, Seraphina initiated a vox communication with the Imperial fleet. Her voice echoed through the void as she conveyed the urgency of the situation. The Imperium, ever vigilant against the threats that lurked in the warp, responded swiftly, dispatching a fleet to Nebula Nexus to intercept any impending ritual. As the Imperial fleet approached Nebula Nexus, a ripple in the fabric of reality heralded the awakening of the Void-born Malevolence. Dark tendrils of energy snaked through the void, converging on the ancient space hulk. The malevolent force sought to manifest itself, fueled by the ritual inscribed in the forbidden book of Malkador. In the central chamber, Seraphina and her retinue could feel the space hulk shudder as if the very stars were being extinguished. The air crackled with energy, and the symbols on the walls pulsed with an unnatural glow. The spectral entities, guardians of the forbidden book, materialized as ethereal warriors, their eyes ablaze with an otherworldly fire. The ensuing battle between the acolytes and the spectral guardians was a clash of spiritual forces. Bolter fire and ethereal blades clashed in the surreal darkness of the space hulk. The whispers in the shadows crescendoed into haunting wails as the two forces clashed in a struggle that transcended the material realm. Seraphina, undeterred by the chaos unfolding around her, continued to read the prophecies. The ritual's completion required a sacrifice, an offering of psychic energy that would open a rift into the warp, allowing the Void-born Malevolence to breach into real space. The acolytes, fighting against the spectral guardians, realized the gravity of the situation. With grim determination, they rallied around Seraphina, creating a defensive perimeter to ensure she could complete the ritual and expose the malevolent force's vulnerability. As the ritual neared its culmination, the space hulk quaked violently, and the whispers coalesced into a cacophony of inhuman voices. The rift in the warp opened, and the Void-born Malevolence began to manifest, a swirling maelstrom of darkness that threatened to engulf the Nebula Nexus. In the final moments, Seraphina uttered a prayer to the God Emperor, channeling the psychic energy of her retinue into the ritual. The forbidden book of Malkador glowed with an intensity that bordered on blinding, and the malevolent force recoiled as the psychic sacrifice disrupted its manifestation. The Imperial fleet, arriving at Nebula Nexus, unleashed a barrage of cyclonic torpedoes and psychic nullification beams. The malevolent force denied its entry into real space, writhed in agony as it was banished back into the warp. The void returned to its cold, silent state, and the Nebula Nexus was spared from the cosmic horror foretold in the forbidden prophecies. Seraphina and her retinue, battered but victorious, emerged from the space hulk. The Forbidden Book of Malkador, its pages now scorched and unreadable, was sealed within an arcane stasis field. The Inquisitor knew that the knowledge within the tome was too dangerous to be allowed to persist. As the Imperial fleet secured Nebula Nexus, Seraphina contemplated the grim reality that the prophecies had revealed. The galaxy, teetering on the precipice of darkness, would require eternal vigilance against the cosmic forces that sought to plunge it into the abyss. The Forbidden Book of Malkador, now a relic of averted doom, was entrusted to the most secure archives of the Inquisition. Its secrets, locked away, served as a reminder that even in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, some knowledge was better left undiscovered. The echoes of Nebula Nexus lingered in the void, a testament to the ever-present threats that lurked in the unseen corners of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where the immaterium, the realm of the warp, encroaches upon the material universe, there exist tales whispered in hushed tones among the denizens of the galaxy. Stories of horrors beyond mortal comprehension, of entities that lurk in the shadows, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of madness and despair. Among these tales, none are more chilling than that of the Warp's Whisper, a haunting legend that speaks of a malevolent presence that preys upon the minds of those who dare to venture too close to the edge of the immaterium. It was in the desolate world of Stygian Ninth that the Warp's Whisper first made its presence known. Nestled on the fringes of imperial space, Stygian Ninth was a world shrouded in darkness, its surface scarred by millennia of war and strife. Few dared to tread upon its barren soil, for tales of strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances had long plagued the planet. Among the brave, or perhaps foolish, souls who ventured to Stygian Ninth was a squad of Astra Militarum soldiers led by the seasoned veteran Sergeant Marcus Draven. Tasked with investigating reports of heretical cult activity on the planet's surface, Draven and his men descended upon Stygian Ninth with grim determination, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. As they journeyed deeper into the heart of the planet's twisted landscape, the squad soon found themselves beset by strange visions and unsettling whispers that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of reality itself. Shadows danced at the corners of their vision, and the air grew thick with an oppressive sense of dread. But it was not until they reached the ruins of an ancient temple, long forgotten by the passage of time, that the true horror of Stygian Nyme revealed itself. Within the crumbling walls of the temple, they discovered a gateway, a tear in the fabric of reality that led directly into the warp itself. Driven by a combination of curiosity and desperation, Draven and his men ventured through the gateway, their minds assailed by the cacophony of madness that awaited them on the other side. In the swirling maelstrom of the immaterium, they were confronted by visions of their deepest fears and darkest desires, twisted and distorted by the malevolent influence of the warp. But it was the warp's whisper itself that proved to be the greatest threat of all, a disembodied voice that echoed through the void, promising power and knowledge beyond imagining to those who would heed its call. With each whispered word, it wormed its way into the minds of Draven and his men, twisting their thoughts and warping their perceptions until they were little more than puppets dancing to its tune. As the squad descended further into madness, they found themselves stalked by nightmarish entities that hungered for their souls, a grotesque menagerie of demons and abominations that sought to drag them screaming into the depths of the warp. But even in the face of such unspeakable horrors, Draven refused to yield. With every ounce of his willpower, he fought to resist the siren song of the warp's whisper, rallying his men to stand firm against the encroaching darkness. In a final, desperate gambit, Draven hurled himself at the source of the warp's whisper, a pulsating mass of swirling energy that loomed before them like a monstrous specter. With a defiant roar, he plunged his blade into the heart of the entity, shattering its hold over the minds of his men and banishing it back into the warp from whence it came. As the echoes of their battle faded into the void, Draven and his men emerged from the depths of Stygian Nining, their bodies battered and their spirits scarred by the horrors they had endured. But though they had faced the darkest depths of the Immaterium and emerged victorious, they knew that the warp's whisper would always linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare the unwary in its web of madness and despair. And as they gazed out upon the stars, they vowed to remain ever vigilant, for in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the horrors of the warp were never far away.